Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden. I'm joined today by the man, the myth, the legend, Michael J. Facci. Facci, how's it going?
Pretty good. No complaints at all. Life is good. I've recovered from the lottery, situation, whatever you want to call that. I've put it in the past. The debacle, fiasco, tragedy, any word that you want to use. I'm feeling better these days, and I'm feeling more hopeful about the future.
All righty, well, we're talking about the future of this team and looking at the guards currently on the roster and how they play out into the Pacers' future. So we did the centers yesterday. It was pretty straightforward. We also talked about a lot of other things in terms of the Eastern Conference and Tyrese Haliburton getting back on the court. So a lot of good stuff on yesterday's episode. If you haven't listened to that, please go back and listen to it. I think you guys will be encouraged. But if you're here and you listen to yesterday's episode, let's just jump right into it, Foch, because we're talking about the guards. We're going to work our way up from number 6 to number 1. So in terms of envisioning this guard group for the future, who do you have at number 6?
It's probably pretty rare to have the youngest guy on the team on this list, or the youngest guard, we'll say. But I got Kam Jones here, and I just don't know if I see him on this roster 2+ seasons from now, because his contract isn't even fully guaranteed for year 2, which was already, to begin with, when the Pacers made the trade and signed him, was already a unique type of contract in terms of like a very light guarantee. But due to him not hitting the threshold of 41 games played last year, contract is not fully guaranteed by any means, and the guarantees get even lighter. So the Pacers can easily find themselves just kind of walking away with no commitment at all to Kam Jones. After this season, he could be included in a trade. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see more out of him, but I left year 1 really thinking this guy had a golden opportunity and kind of fumbled it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Kam Jones, I wrote about the guards already on Pacers on SI. If you guys haven't checked that out, you can do that in the written work that I put out. But honestly, I had him at number 6 myself. And it's just, he is clearly a talented young guard. But does that mean that he's ready to be a point guard in the NBA? That does not necessarily translate to me, because the Pacers had the opportunity, Facci, to play him 41 games, to guarantee his contract. And they said, you know what, we're just going to play him 37. And this is a young man that missed a lot of time early on in the season because of a back injury that he suffered. And then he also had the speeding incident where he was caught going 90 miles an hour when they're in a 55 mile per hour speed zone. And so the fact that he, had that little setback early on in the season, it just, to me, not saying red flags, but maybe some yellow flags, like caution, maybe this guy's not the long-term spot. But they did spend quite a bit of draft capital to get up in the second round and get him at 38th overall. And I know we just talked about the bigs, and a lot of fans that I've heard say, man, it would have been really nice if they would have drafted Maxi Renault, the Sacramento Kings center, that had a really nice season with Sabonis being out for a lot of the season. But that being said, I mean, Kam Jones, I understand why they like the idea of him, because they do like having those combo guards that can do a little bit of both at the 1 and the 2, but he's too left-hand dominant, and he's not really a table setter. As a three-point shooter, Facci, just 29% last year from the field. That is not sustainable, and sure, you got to give him a little bit of slack because of who he's playing with, the amount of injuries he was trying to overcome, and just trying to get his feet wet. I get all of that. But it's really going to come down to me for what he does at Summer League to really determine how they view him long-term. Because if he has a poor performance in Summer League, there's no chance that they keep him on past this season.
Yeah, and even if, yeah, exactly. But even if they just keep him on, I think he could be the guy that we just see with DNP, coach decisions all the time. It's going to be hard for him to get minutes. So I do think that this is a huge offseason for him to really be able to try and carve out some sort of role. And even then, like, sadly, knock on wood, it might have to come by injury. And it's obviously the worst. But I do think for Kam Jones, there was some hype, on draft night being able to acquire him. And I don't think we were able to catch back up to that sort of hype just based off of how his rookie season got off to a start and honestly didn't finish that much better.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to number 5, and I'll go first this time. And this is where I have the other player that's on a partial guaranteed contract, and that's Quenton Jackson. I like Quenton Jackson a lot. When I put this article out and I saw some people responding to it, they had him a little bit higher than 5, and that kind of surprised me based on who's on this list. But with Q, right, he got converted to a standard contract, but only $250,000, I believe, is guaranteed for next season, which if the Pacers are trying to be in championship contention mode, right, this is a very tough spot for him to be in because if they were to cut him, they would save so much money and then have the ability to offer quite a bit more of that mid-level exception and not be a tax-paying team before that. So I do believe that there is a world where they could cut him to create more space cap-wise, but I don't know. But we've seen him have some big moments last year. And the games that stand out to me specifically was the awesome game where he had 25 points. It was a career high against Golden State, 5 of 5 in the fourth quarter, 41 points, played lockdown defense on Steph, who went 8 of 23 for the game and 4 of 16 from 3. And then you think about what he did in the Garden in that overtime game where he had 7 of 13 in overtime to silence New York with a 137-134 victory. So I just think that he is a guy that you can throw into a situation like a playoff-like game and feel like he can at least maybe give you something, be a spark for a game or so, but it's not one of those things where you're trusting him, Facci, for the entirety of a playoff series to be like, oh, here's our backup point guard. I don't see that. But as an emergency point guard, emergency guard that can maybe give you a little bit of a feisty edge to him, that is where I envision him. And so that's why I think he's higher than Cam because the sample size is larger. But I also just don't know how much I see him on the team long term because of the contract situation.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. So I got him right over here. I think that I have a good level of familiarity with Quenton Jackson, just like you do, just like the players do, where we've seen him now for numerous seasons. You know that at times we've said he might be the best two-way player in the league because I think that, like, if you look at his actual stats, those are solid stats for any just like rotational player, let alone a two-way player. So shot the three ball well, hustles hard on defense, like made big plays. We've seen him start a handful of like actual games that mattered and instead of just like, oh, we're gonna get blown out by a lot. Like you mentioned, that game against Golden State, that was awesome. That was the Pacers' first one of the season. Then he got hurt. And I just felt like he had injuries at bad times where I think Quenton Jackson could have had a really solid year with all the injuries that Indiana went through. But at the end of the day, there is still this like you were a two-way player for a while, and I think that the Pacers have a history of rewarding those players at the end of the year with a standard contract, but them not really necessarily sticking around. And I think that Quenton Jackson is going to be given every fair opportunity to still stick around. But yeah, when push comes to shove, I do think he's a little bit more expendable than some other players on this list that are a little bit more locked into their roles, where Quenton Jackson still feels like the type of guy that's got to earn that role every single day, night in, night out. I mean, we've talked about this before. The stat that Carlisle, the quote that Carlisle had about him being now essentially a standard guy and like having to earn that, night in, night out. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of like, hey, now it pretty much starts. Like you've done so much to get to this point. Now you got to work even harder to kind of stay here. And I think that's exactly where Quenton Jackson's at right now is like, you got to have a career year every year now just to stick around the league.
Yeah, what he basically said is you've already reached the top of this mountaintop. Now you got to start over and you're climbing up to the next mountain.
There you go.
Right?
Yep.
And I thought it was a great analogy by Carlisle just to kind of put it in perspective. Like, yeah, your goal was to reach a standard contract in the NBA, but now that you've got it, you got to keep working your way up to becoming a rotational player, maybe even a starter at some point. I don't necessarily see that for Quenton Jackson, but I do
Not
see
here.
if not here, definitely. But I do think maybe if he's given an opportunity to stick with this team the next couple of years, could he elevate himself into a rotational player? I'm not going to rule it out, but it does seem very unlikely. So I think this is where the list kind of starts to begin right here, Foch, in this 4 to 2 range maybe, but I'm curious who you have at number 4.
At number 4, I got TJ McConnell. And here's where I had to factor this in. His age. He's 34 years old now. And I know some people absolutely love McConnell, to the moon and back. But he's 34 years old. 2 seasons from now, he'll be 36, turning 37. How much longer can he fully be vintage McConnell for. And I just think that we saw Indiana do a really good job preserving him last year, keeping him fresh, but his minutes have quietly gone down each of the last few seasons to the point where if McConnell was to come back 2+ years from now, it would have to be a very, very team-friendly deal, and I don't know necessarily what his role would be at that point. So, to me, it was hard to put McConnell any higher than this.
If TJ McConnell is on this team in 2 years, Facci, he has to be the James Johnson of this team.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It's just like,
and honestly, like having him as a third string point guard isn't the worst idea. Maybe you find a little bit more versatile point guard just to kind of replace him. Now, here's what I will say: if there's any point guard that I think could still be effective at 36, that's a backup. I think TJ McConnell could do it. He just keeps his body in great shape, and I think if they're very smart about his minutes and played him took 2 or 3 minutes off per game, play him like 14, 15 instead of like 17, 18, whatever he averages now. Maybe he's already at 14, 15. Maybe he plays like 12. But I think
he's been playing like 16 to 17 minutes, so like you're pretty spot on of what it is. So like, it gets down to 10 to 12 minutes. How much could you pay for that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think minimum contract, because this is where I think he would have to understand, like, I don't want to go anywhere else. I want to be with the Pacers. I want to retire an Indiana Pacer. Especially if the Pacers win a championship, I think there's kind of like this like mutual agreement, like we want to keep you around because you mean so much to our franchise and our organization. And he might just retire in 2 years. I'm not saying that that's out of the question. If they win a championship in the next 2 years, I would not be stunned if TJ McConnell said, I'm ready to retire. I want to get into coaching, that kind of thing, because, he's got a young family, and obviously it would be great to be able to spend time with them and not have to worry about being in the NBA every day. But I could see him playing until he's 40 and just being an effective guard at as a third string level player. So age is the main factor here why I have him at number 4 as well. And it's hard to say that. Now, it's hard to say oh, I can't believe, he's below Ben Sheppard and Andrew Nembhard. Like, he's such a big part of this team and whatever. I mean, there's fans that probably think he should be higher, but what I will get at is his 3-point shot is something that I think will hurt him as he gets older, because he won't have the legs to do the shots that he does now and play that backcourt press and steal the ball type thing. So I personally just think if he can develop a 3-point shot, which just sounds crazy to say at this point, but if he's able to pull a Vince Carter and turn into this lights out 3-point shooter once he's kind of lost that step athletically, that could keep him in the league longer. That's the only thing I will say. But I love him as just a mentor, players coach for this team as he kind of winds down his career after this 2-year window.
Yeah, I think it would be perfect for him. And we've always known coaching's in his blood. It's his dad is, not only a very well-respected high school basketball coach, but also coached 2 kids that were, good enough to go to the NBA and the WNBA. So says a lot about him, feels like a natural transition. And I do think that this contract that he signed was a really solid contract that set him up for life. TJ McConnell was the definition of, when you think of trust the process, undrafted type of guy, scratching and clawing for deals. I remember when he signed with the Pacers, it was just thought it might be a 1-year deal, and he's branched it out time and time again. So I do think, making about $10 million per year on a multi-year contract was enough to set him up. So hopefully that if he was to return, it would be with the full understanding of hey, you might not play that much. You're always welcome, but this is really what we could give you. And it's about mentoring and getting the younger guys ready and things like that. And I think he's always been a class act understanding that. So never say never, but McConnell ain't getting any younger. I think that's what we could all agree upon. And once a guard gets to 36, 37 years old, if their game doesn't evolve, it tends to kind of kick them out of the league a bit. And I think McConnell, unfortunately, has never had that 3-point shot that we've seen other guards kind of develop as time goes on. That's kept them in the league. I always think of a Jason Kidd who, for so long couldn't shoot threes at all. By the time he retired, he was top 3 or top 5 in three-pointers made. So he's got to evolve. And at this point, it's just hard for me to imagine McConnell having a steady 3-point shot.
Well, it's too much. It's too long into his career now to believe that he could. But like I said, I'm not going to rule TJ out. I love.
We've seen flashes.
Yeah, he's gotten better. I mean, we'll say that. So The Eastern Conference Finals has been decided as the New York Knicks take down the Cleveland Cavaliers in a 4-0 sweep, but right now the Oklahoma City Thunder have a 3-2 lead over the San Antonio Spurs. But listen, if you're wanting to cash in on the action, there's no better way to cash in than on Prize Picks, a preferred partner of the NBA. Every bucket, every diamond, every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks, so don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks wants us to tell you about this new feature. On Prize Picks, you can pick live squares during the NBA playoffs. You can win a trip for two to the NBA Finals. To enter, you just make a $5 lineup with at least one live NBA player pick during any part of the 2026 NBA playoffs. Live player picks are picks made after a game is already in progress. On Prize Picks, how you play, it's up to you. If you want the flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks does miss. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the Power Play. No matter your play, Prize Picks is a greater way for you to put your takes to the test. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code PACE to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, preferred partner of the NBA. All right, let's move on to number 3. I think our list is going to be pretty much parallel with one another. So at number 3, we're going Ben Sheppard. I don't think this is really too much of a surprise here with anybody. I did see some really just unnecessary Ben Sheppard slander. I had people saying Quenton Jackson and Kam Jones should be higher than Ben Sheppard.
Nope.
It's just ridiculous to me. I do not understand what Ben Sheppard has done to the fan base to make them hate him so much. But he goes out there, he's consistent almost every single time he's on the floor. Sure, he hasn't taken leaps and bounds as a player because that's not who he is. And there's obviously times where I want him to shoot the ball more. We saw him learn how to put the ball on the floor a little bit more this season. Defensively, he's always in the right spot. He's not a great on-ball defender, but I think he's a very good team defender that can guard in the system. And he's kind of been asked to play a defensive player that he's not known to be. I think people forget when he was drafted to be a three-point specialist that was not a great defender. Then all of a sudden he gets thrust into the Eastern Conference Finals in his rookie season, and you're playing the Boston Celtics, and then he's playing the Knicks, and it's just all right, go out there and guard these awesome wings and figure out how to do it. And then also, hit some shots. Well, the three-point shot is finally coming around, it looks like. I'm not saying that I believe Ben Sheppard is this long-term answer, because I can see a world where Ben Sheppard is traded this offseason.
It's definitely not out of question.
Which makes this hard to put him at 3, which is why I thought maybe I'd bring him lower, because he is a very tradable contract. But I also think he's a very cheap, extendable contract that is extremely team-friendly for your 9th or 10th man for a championship-level team. So there's two sides of the coin. Whatever you want to flip it, I'm here to hear the argument. But I can't say that he is worse than players that are third-string guards like Kam Jones and Quenton Jackson.
Not at all. I mean, like you said before, I mean, it's all right to not be a Ben Sheppard guy. I've gone through ebbs and flows of liking Shep, disliking him, seen him go into an absolute slump, seen him, get hot. There's been, he's been hot and cold. But what I will say is, from January on, this man shot about 42% from 3. He looks like the guy he was advertised as on draft night. I think that the coaching staff loves Ben Sheppard. I think he's very low maintenance. You could just kind of have him out there. He can do whatever you need. He doesn't need the ball. If he's open, he'll shoot it. If he's on, that's way better, because obviously more times than not, he's probably been off. But I do think that Ben Sheppard's the type of guy that would seem a little bit more likely to maybe sign that team-friendly type of contract, where it's $5 million per year for 4 years, and you're like, oh, wow, you know what? How are you going to find a player that knows this style of offense and defense better than Ben Sheppard for, just above, slightly above a minimum type deal? So I couldn't put him any lower, because he's significantly younger than a TJ McConnell and has more promise than a Kam Jones and, a Quenton Jackson, most likely. Maybe Quenton Jackson's peak or his top of the top has been better than Ben Sheppard. Like, you don't see Ben Sheppard go off for 20 or 25 points in a game. You just don't. And you probably, maybe, never really will. But Ben Sheppard fits this team seamlessly, is what I would say. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is here long term. But on the flip side, like you mentioned, I wouldn't be surprised if he's also not. It all is going to come down to like, how team friendly of a contract are you willing to sign? Because if Shep was somehow pushing for too much more, yeah, then he could easily be, left to test the waters.
Yeah, I mean, they can definitely upgrade at this position.
They totally can.
I don't think saying we're going in with Ben Sheppard as our backup guard makes you feel super great, right? Like, it's like yeah, we like Shep, but like, how much did we hear them talk about last year? How Johnny Furphy is like a bigger Ben Sheppard. I don't think they said that for nothing. It just, I'm not trying to say I don't want him here, and I'm not trying to say that I do want him here. I'm just trying to put it out there that they can make upgrades at the guard. They can use his contract to make this team better. But if they decide not to do it, it's not the worst decision ever, like some fans act like, because he is still a capable player. But I do think there's probably a world where he gets outplayed by like a Landry Shamet for New York. Like, if that's who you're saying, hey, go out there and match his minutes or guard him, can he guard Landry Shamet? I think there's a world where he gets torched by Landry Shamet because we've already seen it against the Pacers, and he's had a pretty good postseason as well. So I think if Sheppard really wants to belong on this team and be a part of this team moving forward, he's got to take the necessary steps to just be better. He's got to be better. And what he's been so far has been good, but not good enough. And so I think that that's where I'm at. He can be better. I think he can be better, but I also think his ceiling is pretty close to being reached. And that's why a lot of fans probably feel the way that they feel in terms of a little bit sour on him.
And that's what worries me is like, I almost just feel like his ceiling is like just being consistent. Like, it's almost just like, hey, if he could just be consistent, I would pick him as better. It's just like, how do we avoid there was times where I remember it was like he had missed like his last 23 pointers scattered over like a 6 or 7 game sample size. Like, he's had some real bad cold streaks where it just seems like, as a guy advertised as a 40% 3-point shooter, so like, how are you shooting like 30% from 3 or anything along those lines? But what we saw in the calendar year of 2026 was encouraging. It was. And sure, you can make an argument to just say, well, yeah, I mean, what else do the Pacers have going for him? But I think that he's just, like I said, very low maintenance, could fit in, do whatever you need him to do, and could always give you a good 10 to 15 minutes any given night. You don't want him playing too much, but he's young enough and cheap enough where I could see him signing like a 3-4 year deal at a very reasonable amount and just being part of this team, maybe not necessarily getting too much better, but just being a consistent rotation guy.
All right, well, let's move on to number 2, and I think we both have the same player because number 1's pretty obvious. So number 2 is number 2, Andrew Nembhard.
Yes. No, it is. I mean, look, Nembhard, man, he honestly changed a lot of the course of what the Pacers do. I just think probably doesn't get enough credit of like, if they don't strike gold on pick 31, like, I don't know, where are you? Like, he's been like the perfect player to play alongside Haliburton, mask Haliburton's defensive deficiencies, but also we saw him really step up and be a lead guard last year and be borderline top 5 in assists. And you know, the way he ended the year, he ended it like looking like Haliburton to an extent. Like, he was starting to have to throw to an extent, and more from like the assist to turnover ratio. Like, he wasn't hitting like heroic 3-point shots in the final seconds to drag a team from the depths. But I felt like he was starting to have those games where it's like, like, you remember he had like 19 assists and like 2 turnovers or something like that. He was starting to like rack up double doubles, and I think that's going to help him grow as a player. And we're not going to say that he's untouchable because he's not, but it feels that he's untouchable-ish, where the Pacers have been like, no, we don't have any interest in including Andrew Nembhard in any trade discussions. The contract that he signed last time was an absolute bargain. So next time around, that does worry me a bit, where, he could be looking to sign a deal that's like, I don't know, $25 million per year, something substantial. But I also feel that the Pacers' success is partly in due to how great of a surprise that he was from a couple years ago to now.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question once
What do
we
you
get
got?
finished with all the rankings on like Sunday, probably. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to can this one for a minute, but I think it's a really interesting question. It just popped in my head now, but I don't want to spoil anything for the future of our
To be
rankings. So,
continued.
but with Andrew Nembhard, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said this is the perfect fit next to Tyrese Haliburton, and where would the Pacers be at had they not got him at 31? Because it's just so funny because we were like, why did they take Nembhard at 31? We were
I know.
so appalled by that pick. We were like, why do they need the point guard? Like, they've already got TJ and Tyrese. Like, why are you taking a point guard at 31? And then all of a sudden, what do we know? Like game 2 or 3, the guy's starting as a rookie because Carlisle
Crazy.
couldn't keep him off the floor. And Carlisle said, oh, when Hoops Hype does their redraft, Andrew Nembhard's going to be, top 15, then top 10. And now, if you look a lot of places, he's top 5.
I
So
know.
this is
Ooh.
a very, very, very gifted player that is only going to get better. He's still entering his prime, Facci, and I think people forget that. The other thing is he is the exact same age as Tyrese Haliburton. He's born
Love it.
January 16th, 2020, or 2000, excuse me, not 2020, January
Yeah.
16th, 2000. And Haliburton was born on, leap year, 29th of February, 2000. So a month older than Haliburton. You cannot ask for a better backcourt partner for Tyrese. And I know people are going to push back and say, the guy can't shoot threes. Okay. In the playoffs, though, when it matters the most, this is one of the best shot makers we've
Crazy.
seen in
True.
Pacers franchise history. This guy rises to the occasion. He tastes blood, and the more intense the game gets, the better he gets as a player. These are guys you do not let go and you hold on to tightly. So our friends Brad and Ryan from the Pacers Post Up, they do a great job. They have given Nembhard the name of the guy that makes the shot before the shot. And how many times have we seen him do that, Foch, throughout the year? So I'm just a big fan of Nembhard. Every time I talk about him, I get excited. People know that I'm just, I stand Nimhell. I am obsessed with him, and I'm going to continue to do that because I think he's that important to this team. I think he's the best defender on this team.
Yep.
I think he's an incredible secondary playmaker. I think primary, he could be a little bit better. But with Tyrese back, like there is going to be, like this last season, while it was not a great year for the Pacers, Nembhard, like you mentioned, he took steps forward and he's going to grow from that. And you throw in his Ivica Zubac setting him screens now with Tyrese spreading the floor, Nesmith and Siakam spreading the floor. I mean, my goodness. I think while his numbers might come down statistically, they're going to be very good. And I think in 2 years from now, he's only going to get better. You don't trade players like this and get rid of players like this that are in their prime. And if it costs you $25 million to keep him, I think you do it without blinking twice.
I think you got to do it because the alternative is not pretty. Like you don't have someone ready to step up in there. Like if I ever even heard, and I don't want to slander Ben Sheppard after his compliment, but if I ever heard like, "Oh, we still got Shep," I'd be like, "Stop it now," because it's just like, Nembhard is really like we've seen this guy hit game winners. We've seen him lock up players like like a Jalen Brown. Just seen so many guys at big time challenges that he's taken on in this league, and I really do feel that he ended last season playing his best ball, and that's what it was. I got his stats pulled up right now. His last 4 games were all double doubles. 13 points, 14 assists, 14 points, 19 assists, 13 points, 10 assists, 15 points, 10 assists, and the turnovers were all 2 or less. So he had a career year from 3. I feel like he grew tremendously, about 17 points per game, nearly, 8 assists per game. That's great growth. But now I just think that this lightens the load, takes the pressure off of Haliburton. And we've talked about this. The times that teams would kind of take Haliburton a little bit out of the game or take the Pacers' flow out by picking him up at half court, double teaming him, and he'd have to dump it off. I feel like now you're going to have a tough time doing that because Andrew Nembhard can run this offense. And Haliburton's a good 3-point shooter. So it's like that might free up Haliburton to be able to, cook, whatever, hit threes, anything of that sort. So I love the growth that he took. I think it would be a big mistake if the Pacers weren't to like re-sign Nembhard when the time came, but I think they know exactly what they're doing. They know what they got here, and I don't even want to envision a Pacers team without Andrew Nembhard there because I think we always call Neesmith the glue guy, but Nembhard also does hold a lot together for this team.
No, he does, absolutely. And I can't stand, like, it drives me nuts. People are like, I really want to see Nembhard go to the bench and be the backup point guard behind Haliburton, and we can get a better two guard. I'm just like, do you guys not realize how this team works? Like, they desperately need a secondary playmaker because of the amount of attention Tyrese gets on him. And if you do not have someone that can play the point guard running the two, you're going to be in trouble. And that's where he comes in and makes such a difference. And honestly, like, just the defense that he provides, like, just think about this. Last year, Jalen Brunson was so frustrated, he headbutted Andrew Nembhard. Jalen
Hey,
Brunson
did he ever get a suspension for that or a fine? Did he? No, I'm just kidding. I just remember when that question came up, it was like, dude, what? That was like a year
9
ago.
months later.
Yeah, like who are we supposed to contact about that? But
Yeah.
no, that was what he did. You always want a guy that can set up camp in someone's head outside of like a Pat Bev that's kind of like crossing the line a little bit. Like Nembhard does it in a way that it's like, man, I'd love to play with that guy, and I hate playing against him right now.
Well, I mean, just think about it 2 years ago, how much him and Beverly got into it. Same with Bobby Portis. Like, he just constantly is chirping and getting into it with guys. DiVincenzo was another one 2 years ago.
Mhm.
But last year, like, what I was trying to get at was Jalen Brunson. Like, Jalen Brunson is one of the most laid-back, stoic players in the league. For him to get that frustrated with Nembhard, it wasn't just what Nembhard was doing defensively. Nembhard is low-key one of the craziest trash talkers in the NBA.
I love every
He's
second of it.
sly, he's quiet, but he gets under people's skin, Foch, and that's what makes him such a valuable asset to have. Like, Neesmith doesn't do that. He just plays super physical. Siakam probably talks a little bit. We know Ty definitely talks, and Ty's very vocal. I guarantee Zubats won't be talking, but Nembhard,
Yeah, probably not.
he's going to be talking, and you need somebody like that because we know Obi and TJ really aren't talking. Like, TJ's having fun, slapping butts, that kind of thing, but not sitting out there like going at guys unless something really triggers him. But Nembhard, it is just like what fuels him. So I love it, and I've talked enough about Nembhard. Let's get on to number one, the reason we're doing this podcast, the face of the franchise, Tyrese Haliburton.
I mean, there's really kind of no team without Haliburton. Like, I think you can kind of say that. To be honest, I think he probably should have got MVP votes this year because you saw what the team looked like without him. I mean, dare I say, I feel like he's had a Steph Curry type impact for the Pacers, not for the league, where when this man's on the court,
Colin Cowherd.
I did hear that take, and I thought about that right when I was about to say it, and I'm like, ugh, I'm not trying to steal that, but what I'm trying to just get at is like, I don't want to say that, like, I'm just saying from the standpoint of like when this man's on the court, the Pacers are contenders. They are totally contenders that could beat anybody. They can pull it upset, and we've even seen the stat where it's like, who brought it up? I can't even remember. We had someone on. I don't know if it was Derek Schultz that was like, are the Pacers undefeated with a healthy Tyrese Haliburton in the playoffs? And I was like, wow, they
I
are.
haven't lost with him at all.
Yeah.
He's been hurt the 2 years.
But yeah, exactly. Undefeated in terms of like they haven't got, lost a series because obviously hurt against the Celtics, hurt against the Warriors, not the Warriors, the Thunder in Game 7. So I just feel like in this scenario, you see it when he's on the court, Indiana could beat anybody. When that man was off the court, it was debatable who they could beat this year. It was downright rough basketball to watch. And Haliburton, to me, is like a lot can change in 2 years, but he is the one piece that can't. He's got to be the guy that is there for years and years to come, even if you're talking about building like the next Pacers team. He needs to remain to be like that Reggie where like you go through a lot of different transitions, but he's the constant.
Okay, so while I do love that Tyrese Haliburton is the leader of this team and the face of this team, I can't envision a Pacers team without Tyrese Haliburton anytime in the near future. I agree that it's going to be Reggie Miller-esque where he does retire a Pacer if that's what he wants. The Pacers will never trade him. He will never be on the table for any trade talks. And the only thing that would shorten Tyrese's tenure with the Pacers is the amount of injuries that he's had. Now, I wrote this in the article when I talked about the future of this team. Here's what Tyrese Haliburton has dealt with since getting traded to the Pacers injury-wise. Ankle, groin, calf, knee, hamstring, Achilles, and then minimal, but hip, back, and shingles. Okay?
Wow.
That's about 9 to 10 different injuries he's suffered in like
Pretty
3 to
short
4
span.
years.
Yeah.
So I believe in Haliburton because I've seen him do it time and time again. But I also have to say that I do believe that injuries are always going to be a part of his career.
Possible.
And as the Pacers try to manage that, number one, I think he's going to work even harder than he's ever had to work before to keep his body in the best shape possible. I think adding muscle to his legs, adding muscle on places he didn't normally have it, is going to be big for him being able to take those bumps and bruises. The way they play so fast and how they move so much on the court, like that's just who he is. He likes to rip and run, right? That's just who he is. There's going to be some wear and tear at that. So I do think they're going to try to limit the amount of games that he plays, and I think that'd be smart. Not saying they got to treat him like he's 35-year-old Steph Curry, 36-year-old Steph Curry, trying to save his last legs for whatever, but this is where you just have to be very careful over the next couple of seasons to make sure that he doesn't overdo it during the regular season. So I still believe in him as the face of the franchise. He's the point guard. He's the best distributor in the NBA, in my opinion. Probably the most clutch player in the NBA as well.
I think you gotta say so. You gotta say so.
After last year, how can you not? So I know that everything is going to be okay when he comes back from the Achilles. We've seen so many guys do it. I'm not worried about that, but it's the little nagging injuries that continue to make me a little bit concerned about, can he just have a healthy season where he plays at least like 72 games without really feeling like he missed 10 games because of significant injuries? If it's just rest management or injury management, I would love to see that. But I worry, like when you see him with a wrap around his back, and then he's got his hip hurting, and then his legs hurt. It's like, man, like this guy, he plays through a lot of injuries. He's tough as nails, Foch, right? Nails. And
Nails.
I'm not being negative. I'm just putting it out there.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
You have to add that into when you're factoring his long-term trajectory with this team.
I do think you have to put that in there. The unfortunate part is also that it's just like by having that 65 game threshold that you need for those like all NBA type, awards, it puts him in a tough spot because like we know that it's like, when he was battling for the max contract, it's like, yeah, he needs it, but he's up against a very strict, timeline type situation where you really can't afford to miss games. So I do think that, yeah, you know what, hopefully this offseason he's been able to get himself in good shape and do things like strengthen your hamstrings and all that stuff that he's had issues with. And hopefully the lower back isn't something that plagues him throughout his career. But when this guy's on the court, anything's possible. And I think there's very few players in the league that can like uplift an entire team the way that he uplifts the Pacers. Like he is Superman to this team. Like we've seen what they look like without him in a world that felt like it was, I don't know, for anyone who watches Stranger Things, like it felt like the upside down world. It really did. It was like, this is not real life. Like this is not my Pacers that I love to watch. Like these are imposters that are getting blown out by 20 to 30 points on a nightly basis. And the heart wasn't there. The hope wasn't there. That's everything that Haliburton brings to the table. So yeah, he's number one on this list by a wide margin. But I also do love the fact of the growth that Nembhard's had to be able to step into a bigger role and take a little bit off the plate of Haliburton when he comes back, especially early on. Like maybe we do see that, like, hey, give him a game off here or there or that, and crank it up a little bit more when you start to get towards April or May of next year, assuming obviously the Pacers are, a playoff team.
Absolutely, Facci. Well, that's going to do it for our guard ranking of the future. A little bit different than maybe how we would rank them currently, but not too far up, I don't think. So I think the forward spot's going to be the one that's the most difficult.
I think so.
We're going to be ranking the 5 forwards that are still in the roster. So Kobe Brown is considered a free agent right now, so we're not going to put him on this ranking. But you've got Johnny Furphy, you've got Pascal Siakam, you've got Jarris Walker, you've got Obi Toppin, and Aaron Nesmith. That's a much more difficult group to rank based on the future of this team 2 years from now. But with this group, it's got to be Haliburton, Nembhard with a bullet, and then you kind of just fill in the rest with that. I mean, there could be a world where nobody else is back in 2 or 3 years besides those two, but that's okay because I trust those two are going to be the leaders of this backcourt for quite some time. So, with that being said, Pacer Nation, thank you all so much for listening to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. And if you're hoping the Pacers can continue to get healthy in the offseason and get Tyrese Haliburton back and ready to go for the start of the season, Facci, hit us with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.